There are few games I can think of with such a dominant and overbearing meta as Vigor, and even less that has allowed this meta to go unchanged and unchecked for this long. While other games may have annoying metas that decimate for days or weeks, Vigor's meta has largely gone unchanged since the release of 1.2 with the SG1's addition to the game, as well as the nerfs to the ADR that arrived in that update, and that was over a year ago. Hey guys, Christopher Beast here, and in today's video we'll be covering the HBAR meta, what's causing it to be such a dominant weapon, and why it is definitively the best gun in the game at the moment. So to start off, we should probably cover the basics of the weapon, to at least establish how this thing works. The HBAR is a purple rifle with 750 RPM, a 2-shot to chest kill, a 31 round mag, an effective range stat of 970, and it fires 5.56, giving it level 2 penetration, and it takes 2 shots from it to break armor. It should be also noted that the weapon is automatic, has quite low recoil and bloom, allowing it to perform well at much higher ranges. Moving over to how damage drop-off affects this weapon, before 8.0 in the Parker Hail bug, the HBAR was reported by a couple of tests to have no noticeable damage drop-off up to 100 meters, and still being within 2 shot up to 230 meters. A test was done at 330 meters and found at that range, the weapon was a 5-shot to the body. This gave the HBAR insane range compared to any other automatic weapon, excluding the SVU. However, now in 8.0, the Parker Hail bug has basically disabled long range on every weapon. If you don't know what this bug is, I'll have it linked in the description or quick explanation of it, so make sure you check that out if you're confused. But with the Parker Hail bug, following 100 meters, the gun is insane drop-off right now, with 5 shots to head recorded in a test at 110 meters. Like all guns affected by the Parker Hail bug, it is just bad at long ranges now, and we should expect that whenever the Parker Hail bug gets fixed, the weapon will be able to do long range again. Now let's start to compare the HBAR to other weapons and weapon classes. Starting with the class the HBAR is from, comparative to other rifles, it is likely the best. This is because it has the same shots to kill, 2 shots to kill, as nearly every other rifle. However, it has a 31 round mag and is automatic. There are 3 other rifles that have automatic, these being the M2, the SVU, and the SG1. So starting with the M2 is a 5-shot to body at sub 100 meters, which makes it not even a comparison to the HBAR. This is not, of course, talking about the fact that it has much worse recoil and bloom than the HBAR. The SVU is the next comparison, and while due to it not being affected by the Parker Hail bug, it is closer than ever to being an actual comparable weapon to the HBAR. However, with a much smaller mag of only 11 rounds, far more bloom, far longer craft time, higher cost to craft, as well as it not spawning in loot POIs, it is still definitively worse than the HBAR. And the final and most compelling argument in the rifle class against the HBAR is the classic SG1. This gun is basically a worse version of the HBAR right now, though, as it has the same shots to kill, similar bloom, but the SG1 doesn't spawn in loot POIs nearly as often, has a slower fire rate, and with the new 3rd shot recoil spike that came with 8.0, the gun has a harder recoil pattern to use, which, when all of this combines, has made it clear that the HBAR is just the stronger of the two now. Moving over to the machine gun class of weapons, we meet the strongest possible counters to the HBAR. The LMG category is largely going to be better at suppression and can beat the HBAR using this. However, the suppression doesn't matter if the HBAR is able to land shots on the LMG player, as the LMG will have to hit 4 shots to kill with only a slightly faster fire rate, as opposed to 2 shots to kill. Among the LMGs, there is one that is a particularly strong contender, and that is the M249. It has an insanely large mag size, which allows it to keep suppression up for a very long time, which is long enough to kill an HBAR. With a little recoil in prone and in crouch, it can push whenever it wants, and largely the issue is the HBAR will win if it's wearing armor and decides to push, but if it doesn't, otherwise it's just really a battle of skill between the two, because their TTK is around equal, their recoil and bloom is around equal as well. So moving on to the HMG category, which this is the hands down best counter class-wise to the HBAR, with it being able to beat the HBAR at close range reliably due to it having a high enough fire rate to do the same damage as an HBAR. And when combined with armor, HMGs can really ruin an HBAR's day. Mid-range is a toss-up between the two, as HMGs can use prone and insane fire rate and damage to destroy an HBAR, while HBARs can use crouch and the ability to have high mobility by not being stuck in prone, as well as high damage, to move around. And honestly, I'd say they are equals at mid-range fights stat-wise. It really just comes down to which player is better. However, at long range, the HBAR still reigns king, with far better accuracy and less bloom, as well as a scope. While all these weapons sound really good at beating a HBAR in theory, the issues start to come from when you put it in practicality. Machine guns are far rarer and far more expensive than an HBAR to run, as ammo costs are just insane with them. On top of this, HMGs and LMGs are a very hard playstyle to learn, and they're not very popular in the Vigor community as a whole, despite being decent counters to the strong meta. And even if, in theory, you can defeat an HBAR using an LMG and an HMG, that requires a very high amount of skill to actually pull off what the theory suggests. As I said earlier, suppression can be used to pin an HBAR and force it to peek and die. However, if you don't really understand how to do correct suppression by using your higher magazine size, then it won't matter and the HBAR will just peek in between your bursts and kill you. All of this combined means that if you have the skill, you can win with an HMG and an LMG, but the HBAR is still a threat, and one that you still shouldn't take lightly even with the advantage. From here, though, we go to weapons that are just decimated by the HBAR. Starting with the close quarter masters of the SMGs and shotguns, they aren't really masters against an HBAR. Shotguns and SMGs will almost never beat an HBAR at point blank, because they are just not reliable, as most SMGs have a 4-shot kill and arguably a little bit faster fire rate than an HBAR, but it's not fast enough to make up for the 2-shot kill the HBAR has, as well as the fact that a shotgun is not reliable ever. And it should be noted here that the ADR is a decent counter out of the two classes of weapon, due to its close range having just a slightly faster TTK than an HBAR, but failure in even the smallest degree with an ADR, missing one shot, is death for you. While an HBAR, it's a 2-shot kill. They can miss half their mag. As long as they hit 2 shots, they're going to win. And no SMG can say that. SMGs do have to hit basically their entire mag in the initial burst, or they're going to die, which is a problem. And I don't even need to mention mid and far range, because these are SMGs and shotguns. They're not really built for mid and far range. The category that many people argue the HBAR should be in is the assault rifle class. The HBAR arguably wins, however, against every single AR weapon, due to it having a 2-shot kill. The AR class, on average, is going to be a 4-shot kill weapon class. However, the AR class does bring a strong contender against the HBAR, the Bugle. This burst weapon may be one of the few guns in the game that's statistically equal on every level to the HBAR, with both guns spawning in loot POIs, both guns being insanely accurate and having high fire rates. However, where the two differ is that the Bugle is a burst weapon with a 4-shot kill, and the HBAR is an auto weapon with a 2-shot kill. The Bugle has a really tight 3-round burst, which means all it has to do is hit 2 bursts on a target and they will likely die. The HBAR has a 2-shot kill. This makes it so that way really firefights between the two play out almost equally, with the main difference between the two being how they affect armor, with Bugle being slightly better against an HBAR. But to break it down by the range, at close range, the HBAR is kind of going to be better. This is because it's a 2-shot kill weapon, and at point blank, the chance of missing any bullets is very 0, so the Bugle's tight burst is not really a contributing factor here. Next, at mid-range, I would argue they are dead equal, as while the HBAR has the 2-shot kill auto, it also has a slightly slower fire rate, while the burst is going to be 3 shots. If it hits twice, you're dead, and they're about equal accuracy-wise. At long range, the Bugle is slightly better, but this could just be my opinion leaking in, as I would argue that the fact that you can hit 3 rounds of a burst at an extremely long range is slightly better than being able to peck people off with a scope that's auto. But statistic-wise, they are pretty much equal at long range. So these weapons are basically the two closest weapons stat-wise in the game to being meta. So why is it that the HBAR is just so much bigger and so much more of an issue? Well, the HBAR is more popular due to people duping it in extremely large amounts, and due to the length it has been as meta. People have now gathered giant stockpiles of HBARs because the chance that you deconstruct an HBAR for materials is very, very low when you consider how many materials you can get out of it. I would argue that to a degree this is the same with the Bugle, but the Bugle has also not been in loot POIs 2 seasons ago, while the HBAR has been in loot POIs pretty much since it dropped, which is an issue. So long story short, there are very few real counters to the HBAR, and the gun is clearly dominating over the game. But how common and how overbearing is this meta? Well, we can answer that using the frequency charts I've gathered in the past. Starting with data from Season 5, 4% of all weapons in Season 5 were HBARs, making it one of the top 10 most used guns. This was actually a good amount, with it only being 2% higher than the equal distribution amount of 2%. Equal distribution being if every gun was used the same amount. However, this happy stat only got a lot worse in Season 7, with the HBAR holding 7%, making it tied for 3rd place with the white M16. It had a 5% higher frequency amount than the equal distribution. That is insane for a purple weapon and shows just how common of a gun it is at the moment. Finally, it's a truth that every game will have a meta. However, there are some things we must accept. First, that there is no reason for us to accept a meta, for almost every game you can think of has rebalanced their game to try to change and affect the meta to try to change it up. And while this may in some games result in metas that are particularly annoying, the constant changing nature of the meta is something that encourages diversity of gameplay and playstyle over time, giving most playstyles a chance to be the meta. However, it has now been 4 seasons since the meta really set in, and even longer if you consider since the time this meta theoretically existed, with it starting way back in 1.2. I'll admit, our devs are not someone I expect to rotate the meta on a seasonal basis. We as a community should acknowledge that we deserve a meta that's better though, and whatever form that better meta takes is up to the devs. But I will throw my hat in the ring here and propose some changes to the HBAR that I think may balance the gun out and resolve the issue. I will also admit, before I get into those, that fixing the HBAR is only one part of the problem. The SG-1, M249, and to varying degrees the Bugle are all massive problem children that definitely need to be addressed in the near future. So, first, I'll suggest some changes that are not as intrusive and easier for the devs to add. Starting off with the most simple one for me is decreasing the shots to kill from 2 shots to kill to 4, as well as increasing the amount of recoil and bloom to around RPK levels. I view both of these as needed, as the 2-shot kill is a huge part as to why this gun outguns everything at close to mid. However, in order to ensure actual rifles from the rifle category win, it needs to have more recoil and auto. I would also suggest that removing the weapon completely from spawning in POIs, maybe for 1 or 2 seasons, is a necessity to decrease the stockpile amounts. But presuming that doesn't work, what's next? Well, larger nerfs. These would likely take the devs a larger time to program, and in my eyes would destroy the entire usability of the gun, so they're not something I support. So first, remove the hold down breath of aiming down sights. This would violently decrease the usability of the sight, and then you can lower the mag down to 10, making it have a mag size the same as the SVU. Then you can add on top of all of that, the weight of the weapon to around LMG levels, which would be insane, I'm being honest. I don't think any of that's needed, and I think it would completely remove the viability of the weapon. But I figure I offer these changes because they're some things I've heard in the community as being popular opinions, and I wanted to quickly express that I think these are not good ideas. Well, regardless what you think of my solutions, I hope you can at least agree that the weapon needs change. And I personally don't care if they go with my suggestions or not, as long as they actually fix this issue, because a year is too long for someone to deal with a meta. But until next time, this has been Christopher Beast. I'll see you all next time.